6 p.m. Pacific time on the 15th of the month. That means it is time for
the call. And this is our 12th year. So we've been doing this a long, long time. And you know what? This is the year we're going to start, I don't know, carving out more time or maybe find a volunteer to help us so that we can promote this a little bit better, because this is our favorite evening of the month.
It is, without question.
We interview and have interviewed some of the most incredible people over the past 12 years. And tonight we have another great guest. She's someone we met recently, actually about a year ago. And we'll tell you about that in a little while. But
I think we can kind of prime the pump a little bit more than that. She's a neurologist talking about brain health.
Yes, well, that's
how cool is that? Yeah. and prevention of brain, which you call them diseases.
Sure.
So
like Alzheimer's, for example, in any kind of a dementia.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's being one of them, but she has, done years of research, and we'll tell you more about her in a little bit after we read scripture and open with a prayer. But she's done lots of research, years of research. In fact, she's taken a sabbatical from her practice for this past year in order to write this book. And I know it's going to help all of us, because God wants us to live long, healthy lives in body, mind, soul, and spirit, so that we can be a good influence on others. So you're going to get some really great information. I'll tell you, sometimes when you listen to neurologists speak, and we've listened to a few of them, it's just like, whoo, it flies over your head.
Too much info,
too much technical
lingo
for us lay people. I probably know a little more than the most because I'm a nutritionist, and Robert also had a health show, a live radio show for many years. But even then, most people talk, when you're talking to a neurologist, it's easy for them to speak over your head, but Dr. Taryn Clark does not do that. And she has great helpful hints, lots of things to talk about. So we're going to get started with her pretty soon. I'm going to introduce her properly, but Robert, you're going to
let's start with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day where we can come together, and this time where we can spend with you to be able to enlighten us and give us aha experiences and epiphanies that we probably wouldn't have experienced without this. And so we thank you, Lord, for the opportunities we have to be able to gather in your name. For you are the creator of everything. You know everything. You are omnipotent. You are all powerful. And so bring healing where there's need for healing. Bring clarity of mind where we need that the most. Mm-hmm. And may we just continue to realize that with you, all things are possible. So help us to focus on you, your love for us, and your goodness. We love you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. So you selected a scripture to read.
I did. Yeah. And I just remind people that this is that we do not have any income for these podcasts or anything else. You don't see any advertisers or anything. And that's because we are dependent upon your free will gifts and offerings and your support. And so we collect an offering is what we do.
Yeah, in a little while, right?
Yeah, we collected. Well, I'm just announcing it now.
So don't hang up. It's still going to be interesting. And this is not mandatory. And we can't check to see if you donate anything.
Exactly. And Dr. Clark will be coming on in a minute. Or am I not supposed to mention who it is?
I already mentioned her name.
Oh, good. I guess that went over my head. But she'll be coming on in a minute, and there's several ways you can give. You can go to our website, drschuller.org, and you'll find a I Like to Give button, and you can donate that way. You can mail a check to us. Our address is on our website, at the bottom of our page, if you don't get it, which is 26 Canyon Island Drive, Newport Beach, California, 92660. That's 26 Canyon Island Drive, Newport Beach, California, 92660. And then you can Venmo us. It's Robert Schuller Ministry.
Good. I think it's the first time we mentioned our name. We usually say, this is part of the Robert Schuller Ministries. I'm Donna Schuller. This is Robert Schuller. And I don't think we did tonight.
I think
maybe it went over my head.
But anyhow, this is the call. And we've been doing this, like Donna said, for
almost
12
just about
years.
12 years. 12 years in.
And we do it,
Yeah,
if it's the 15th of the month, 6 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to be here wherever you're watching us now. We'll continue to broadcast in this way around the world.
And then the call goes on our podcast, and we have almost 12 years of podcast as well. So when you hang up tonight, or if you're only going to get part of this, actually, more than that, you're going to want to take notes. So if you don't take notes, what you can do is go to our podcast. You just go into your search bar on Google and just put in Robert Schuller Ministries podcast. It'll come up. You can check all the archived podcasts we've had, like I said, for 12 years. And you'll also be able to hear tonight's call, where you're going to need to go over some of the information you hear, because this is going to be a learning experience tonight. And it's going to be fun.
So I'm going to read from 1 Timothy chapter 1. So hear these words from St. Paul. I thank God, whom I serve, with a pure conscience, as my forefathers did, as without ceasing I remember you in my prayers night and day, greatly desiring to see you, being mindful of your tears, that I may be filled with joy when I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded is in you also. Therefore, I remind you to stir up the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. Therefore, do not be ashamed of the testimony of our Lord, nor of me, his prisoner, but share with me in the suffering for the gospel according to the power of God, who has saved us and called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, which was given to us in Jesus Christ before time even began.
Good reminder.
So here we have this calling by St. Paul to realize that he has given us a sound mind. And with that sound mind, there are certain things we want to do to preserve that sound mind and preserve our faith, and to be able to be witnesses of Jesus Christ in the world. And so that's what our passage is all about. And in many ways, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And so without further delay, let's talk. Introduce her.
Sure. I have Dr. Clark's bio here. She's a board certified neurologist with a primary focus on memory and cognitive health. She's been in private practice in Orange County since 2003. She graduated from UCLA with a major in biology and a minor in business administration. That's a good thing for a doctor.
Yeah.
She earned her medical degree from USC Keck School of Medicine and was designated a Dean's Scholar. She completed a residency training in neurology at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. Dr. Clark has served as the medical director and a board member of the Alzheimer's Family Services Center in Huntington Beach. The Alzheimer Foundation of America honored her as the Dementia Care Professional of the Year for 2015. The same year, she was selected to be a delegate to the American Academy of Neurology Palatucci Leadership Forum. She also serves the medical community as an expert reviewer for the Medical Board California. For this past year, she's been on a sabbatical, taking a deeper dive into the health and lifestyle changes that we can all make in midlife to prevent or postpone Alzheimer's disease somewhere down the road. And if you're already elderly like we are, we're past midlife, unless we're going to live to be 130. But no, we're not.
Yeah, we passed midlife.
Yeah, but the result
of the Bible says we'll live to be 120.
That's right. The result of her research is the book, The Brain Health Action Plan, which is expected to be out late this spring of 2024. And you can see this is why we called this program tonight, this podcast, The Brain Health Action Plan, because it's that's the name of her book. So Dr. Clark, Darren, nice to have you on with us. Are you there?
Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can.
vividly, clearly.
Yes.
Wonderful.
That's great.
Good.
And I want to, before we get started, we have lots of questions. I know sometimes these things go over when we get such interesting guests, but I want to say how we met originally was a little over a year ago with our mutual friend, Pastor Amy Cardiff, has these vision workshops. So you were one of the speakers last year, as were each of us. And then you also spoke again this year, as did each of us at various weeks. You know, those vision workshops have grown so much, right, since we became involved. But I think last year was the first time we actually met you, and I just instantly connected with you. And also the things that you taught us really resonated with me. And anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that when we get right into brain health. But why, what have you discovered in your years of practice? I think 24 years of practice. And what are some of the most important things we can do? And let's first of all start right out with Alzheimer's. I think most of us know that it's like an epidemic almost. All of us know somebody that's dealing with dementia, Alzheimer's, one of those brain disorders. So let's start.
Yeah, I don't know of a family who hasn't been touched pretty closely by Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. So it really does affect everybody. And I think now that we've all seen it up close and personal, whether it's in our parents, aunts and uncles, close friends, I think we're finding that we're more motivated to try to avoid it. It has become so common. One of the things that really, woke me up was 2020. Before 2020 happened, I was, practicing medicine, taking care of patients with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And I did incorporate a lot of lifestyle changes for those patients. And I had a couple patients who really had phenomenal responses. I mean, they really fully embraced changing their lifestyle to incorporate some of those changes and had wonderful, wonderful outcomes. I had a couple people who were very early on in their memory problems and actually no longer needed me. Actually, I'm just realizing my lighting's so bright here. And so that was impressive but rare. And so once I started to see, 2020 really showed me it taught me a lot about my teaching in medical school and what I had learned and how I had learned it and maybe where some of that teaching had come from. And a lot of it was from big pharma. And medical school just isn't a place where you ask a lot of questions. It's really a place where you memorize a lot of things. And so 2020 really woke me up to the fact that I can question things and think for myself and think critically about medicine and how our body works and what's available in nature and what some of the industrial processes are offering to us. And so I kind of stepped back a little and started looking at the medications I had to offer for dementia, and they just weren't very impressive in terms of offering patients a lifeline and improvement. And so I started to realize that what I really wanted to do was help the children of my patients. They're in my generation. My mother also died from Alzheimer's disease, actually in 2021. And I realized that I wanted to help folks in the midlife because I think a lot of the lifestyle factors that are predisposing us to getting Alzheimer's disease and other dementias really have snuck up on us. And I don't think that we're making bad lifestyle choices. I think to a large extent, we're just not aware of what's in our food, what's in our air, what's in our water. And so thinking about that a little bit and understanding it, looking, what we should be looking for on nutrition labels, I think can go a long way to trying to push back on some of the toxins that we're breathing in and ingesting. And then also, exercise and cognitive exercise and some of those items and being sure we're sleeping well. I really think it's everything your mother taught you to do in terms of taking care of your body, but we really should be taking care of our body actively.
When we heard you speak, you shared a story of a woman who had all the biomarkers for early onset dementia or Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And she was old and didn't show much any symptoms hardly at all. Can you tell that
You
story?
mean once she recovered?
Oh, yes,
I don't
one
remember.
of I've had a handful of patients that are similar, but one particularly sticks out because this lady came to my office. She was 87 years old, and she was, pretty petite, fit, um, kind of had a funky fighter attitude. And so when she came to see me, she was just starting to have some mild memory problems. As I said, she was 87 years old. And
Mhm.
so when I got the results of her genetic testing, I was really surprised because she had 2 copies of the ApoE4 gene, which we know is an accelerator for Alzheimer's disease for late onset, meaning 65 and over.
Mhm.
And in her genetic group, we would be expecting most people to be showing signs of Alzheimer's disease by age 80. So she was already well beyond that. And I really should have seen her in my clinic at least 7 years before. So I was impressed. And in the times I've seen people like that patient, she really exemplified everything. She had been a marathon runner earlier in life. She never had much of a sweet tooth. So just naturally, she was living a brain healthy lifestyle, not on purpose, but they just happened to be her preferences. And when I saw her, she was still walking 5Ks, still didn't have a sweet tooth. And so, once I saw a couple of those folks, and I already knew that lifestyle was important, but I realized, she had done that in her 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and all the cumulative damage that she prevented during those years really helped her stave off what her genetics had predisposed her to. And I've heard it said, I think it's an accurate statement, genetic loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger. So, especially with people checking their genetics on things like 23andMe and all these services,
Mm.
people may be faced with the fact that they have 1 copy of that accelerator, maybe even 2. Um, and so, really doing everything possible in our lifestyle to not pull that trigger is
Mm.
my focus um, of the book. Whether or not people have those genetics, but even people with those genetics, it doesn't mean they're going to have Alzheimer's at that age. They can fight against it for sure.
That's what I think is one of the most important messages, right? It's the nature versus nurture. What you're given versus what you do with what you're given, right? Is kind of what we're talking about here. And I want to right away say something about the sugar. So another thing you point out, and it's so important for people to hear this. People that may not like desserts or sugar, but they drink their wine at night, and
Mhm.
it's sugar, right? So
Right. So um, I, it's probably a good idea to look at everything you drink and if it has sugar in it or not,
mhm.
because the sugar that comes in beverage form can be pretty dangerous because it's not bound to any fiber. And so it really comes rip roaring into your system. It can cause a huge sugar spike. That's
One of the
followed by,
most shocking ones for me was when I heard about apple juice
Oh yeah.
oh,
and how
yeah,
much sugar is in apple juice. And not,
yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had
I
juice for years.
no, but I have
You
a
know,
dear friend who drinks a lot of it,
mhm.
thinking it's a healthy
Healthy
choice.
choice. Yeah.
I know, and that's part of what I think we've really been kind of tricked into believing by the FDA guidelines and all the nutrition guidelines, and we now know that pyramid is just upside down. Donna, I'm sure you've known that for years because you're a nutritionist, but I think that's a great message to think about. Not drinking sugar. Even in apple juice, what happens when you have apple juice, a soda, a coffee drink that has caramel in it or mocha
Right.
or whatever it is, any sugary beverage, is that sugar hits your system really quickly. It's absorbed really quickly because there's no fiber holding it back like there would be if you ate it in an apple. The absorption would be a little slower. So when that sugar hits your system, you get a huge spike of glucose or sugar in your bloodstream. And then your body responds to that by flooding your system with insulin, which is supposed to push the sugar into the cells so that they can use it for fuel and burn it. But the problem, the direct connection between sugar and Alzheimer's disease is insulin, after it does its job, then your system has a pretty heavy load of insulin in your bloodstream, and it has to get broken down before your body can get rid of it. It's broken down by an enzyme called insulin degrading enzyme, which seems straightforward and well named. But when scientists first discovered that enzyme, they didn't know that it breaks down a lot of proteins. One of the other proteins it breaks down is amyloid, which is one of the two proteins we associate with Alzheimer's disease. It's the plaques of Alzheimer's disease. So if we're constantly bombarding our system with sugar, a pastry at breakfast with juice, more juice or a fancy coffee, lunch may have another sugary something in it, and we're seeing those insulin spikes all day, then the insulin outcompetes amyloid to get broken down, and that amyloid can get deposited in your brain. So that's one of the reasons we really want to stay away from those sharp spikes of insulin. And it's interesting, I actually was fortunate enough to wear a little a blood sugar monitor, a continuous glucose monitor. And so I did a little science experiment on myself, because I knew, from reading, that if you have a whole fruit, that the sugar spike is lower and slower and the juice would be higher. But I had the opportunity to see my body actually process it and see that in real time. And it was crazy to see this little spike of an orange and then an orange juice. And then I had, which I haven't had probably in about 10 years, a Coke Classic. And that was the same as the orange juice, just a massive sugar spike. So, your body doesn't see orange juice, apple juice, and Coca-Cola too differently. I mean, yes, there are some vitamins that come in also, but the sugar spike looks just the same, unfortunately.
One of my favorite breakfasts is to take all those fruits and blend them. I don't juice them; I blend them, and I drink that in the
with
morning
protein powder.
with protein
Lots of
powder and an avocado and some other stuff. But since it's blended, do I still have enough?
Yeah, the fiber should be still in there because you're drinking the whole thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I think when we were at that one conference, one thing that's worth mentioning, and I was just saying, swear off juice, swear off juice, swear off juice. And juicing vegetables is a little different. They don't have the high sugar content that fruits have. So that's a caveat. It's really, when I'm talking about juices, it's really fruit juices that we want to avoid, and especially the prepackaged processed ones. They generally, even if they're the high fiber or high pulp orange juice, it still has about the sugar of 2 or 3 oranges with almost no measurable fiber, in fact. So if you're blending them and then you're eating all the contents, you're still getting all the fiber, which is good.
That makes me feel a lot better.
Well, especially, and I really want to talk about this, because this is what I had the biggest aha with the time restricted eating. And it's so much easier for people to understand than fasting, going all day without food or going 10 hours. And not to say fasting isn't good for certain health issues, or just, there's obviously spiritual fasting as well. But when we talk about the first meal of the day, or the first any kind of sugar we put in our bodies after dinner, if we can talk about that 12 to 15 hours, and if I'm remembering correctly, I'll let you correct me, but between the last meal of the night, and I've had such a hard time telling people that's made a huge difference in me in the last, I think, 2 months since I adopted this. And that is, if I had my last meal. So let's say Robert's having his last, we're going to have salmon and whatever after we get off here tonight. So we'll probably eat a little bit later than normal. We'll finish by 7:15, maybe even 7:30. But at the minimum, we wait till 7:30, preferably 8:30 or 9 tomorrow morning, before he does have his protein drink, or I have my protein drink. Or I think I told you I love tea, and I like putting honey and coconut milk in my tea. Well, now I've learned to drink my tea black until I hit that at least I aim for like 14, 15 hours. And sometimes I come up short and go, I just need it because I ate dinner so late last night or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I only wait 12 to 13 hours. But talk about, would you explain the time restricted eating the way you explained it at the vision seminar? Because
Sure. Yeah.
so good.
I feel the same. I have, as I was researching the book, I hadn't been doing time restricted eating before. I knew it was beneficial, but I hadn't really embraced it personally.
Mhm.
And it's one of the interventions that I found has changed my health for the better the most. So just to kind of backtrack and explain what happens when you stop eating at the end of the day. Well, first of all, it goes back to biblical times, fasting and time restricted eating. The Greek
Mhm.
physician Hippocrates used fasting to treat disease. So it really it is biblical, and obviously fasting is in the Bible. And I think fasting is sometimes a very intimidating term because people
It
just
is.
associate fasting with feeling like they're starving.
Yes.
And I agree that time restricted eating is a better kind of way to go about it. Fasting is generally anytime you haven't eaten for 12 hours. So there are a lot of times that we just happen to fast all the time and we're not thinking about it because we just eat late in the morning. But what happens when we stop eating at the end of the day is we burn through those last calories of the day. And then once we're not taking any calories and we've burned through those, then our body switches to burning sugar that was stored in our liver during the day. And generally we have somewhere between 10 and 14 hours of liver stored in our of sugar stored in our liver.
Exactly.
That we can use to get through the night while we're sleeping and we're not taking any more calories in. Once we burn through all that liver sugar, then we switch to burning fats. So we have to get through all of that liver sugar first, and then we switch over to ketosis, which is the basis of the keto diet where you're burning fats. And at that point, our brain can run on sugar or fats, ketone bodies from this ketosis process, and there's only two fuels it can use. So the benefit of getting through that liver sugar and getting to ketosis or running on fats is that it gives your body a break from sugar and from insulin. And so it allows our cells to reset. They get very stressed when there's a constant supply of insulin. So it removes that stressor of insulin and lets the cells reset their sensitivity. The opposite of insulin sensitivity is insulin resistance. So when we never get a break from sugar, that starts us on the path towards insulin resistance, which can eventually lead to diabetes. So it gives our body a chance to be insulin sensitive again, to reset. It also gives our brain a chance to reset its insulin sensitivity. People may have heard of Alzheimer's being called type 3 diabetes. And it's because a similar thing happens. When the brain is bombarded with sugar and insulin all the time, it can become insulin resistant. So it's really beneficial to get to burning fats for that purpose of resetting insulin sensitivity. I mean, a side effect is that you also will burn fats. So it can be helpful for people. I noticed I wasn't really trying to lose weight, but I noticed that I got a little more lean. So that was a difference that I wasn't really expecting, but my body composition definitely changed. But I think the focus when your brain has had a break from sugar and insulin, the focus the next day is really outstanding. So I would say to most people, I recommend, if you get to a balance 12-12, I don't think that's really a medical recommendation. That's just basically how we should be living. It's kind of funny. I look at this and I think, yeah, like eating for 12 hours and not eating for 12 hours. At a minimum, we should be splitting the last calories of the evening from the first calories of the morning by 12 hours. That's
So
just balanced.
here's
It's not
here's what
really
I did. Here's what I discovered is I discovered that I was doing a lot more snacking and having an extra drink here or there
Yeah.
Right.
than
Right.
after my dinner than I realized. And
I found
so
the same thing.
that was a real minor thing to change, and it was easy. So
Even a healthy snack,
yeah,
like an apple cut up with almond butter. You
yeah.
had dinner, we finish at 6 o'clock, we're still watching,
Like
some
eight
stupid
thirty,
show. Yeah.
8:30 we'd go and have a little snack, and but then and finish around 9 o'clock. But then it's really hard to get in the we aim for 14 hours. So
Yeah.
hard
Yeah,
to get
it's just that mindless snacking, and it's
Right.
not, it's when you're conscious about it. Usually I finish dinner around 7, and then I think,
Mhm.
okay, if I want a snack, I have it pretty much right then, like 7:15 or
exactly.
7.
That's what we do.
If I want ice cream is my
Yeah,
weakness. So if I
exactly.
want ice cream, I eat it like at 3 or 4 in the afternoon before I eat dinner. And then I'm like, okay, my dinner, I'm having salmon. I'm having,
Yeah.
I'll be,
I'll eat healthy then.
I'll eat healthy. I eat my salmon. I'm
Yeah.
done eating my vegetable, my salmon, whatever. Like I said, by tonight we'll be done probably by 7.
And it does help you sleep better. You don't
Oh,
want to start revving up your metabolism right before you sleep. So having a snack at 9, I mean, I did the same thing. I'd be packing my kids' lunches and just kind of nibbling on here and there.
yes.
And once I instituted the strict time restricted eating, I just wasn't tempted. I mean, so many times I found myself going, oh yeah, wait, what am I doing? I don't need this. I don't need a bite of
I've
macaroni.
done that. I've
Exactly.
done that exact thing.
So
Exactly.
here's the other question I have. If you have a huge meal before and the night before,
Yeah,
wake up in the morning, you aren't the slightest bit hungry.
right.
Is your body still using all the sugars, and will it take more than 12 hours
Oh,
to
that's an
consume
interesting
the,
question.
It probably
the
will.
sugars because of the
Mhm.
amount you had to eat the night
Like
before?
Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Exactly.
Yes, it will, because you have to burn through those last calories of the meal before you get to the liver sugar.
Mhm.
So if you have like a monster meal, or if you go and have a bunch of ice cream because you're like, I'm going to stop eating now, so I'm going to go have 4 scoops of ice cream. It
Exactly.
takes several hours to get through those
100%.
sugar calories. So it can be sabotaged, but generally it's when we're realistic, we usually aren't that hungry when we wake up for the most part. Donna,
Yeah.
like you, I was a coffee with half and half and sugar gal, and I cut out the sugar years ago, but I was still doing the half and half. And then I found that was the hardest thing to wait for, was coffee with half and half in it. And so same thing, I switched to black coffee, which I never thought in a million years I would do, ever thought I could tolerate it. And now I love black coffee. So it makes it really easy because I have coffee till 10 in the morning. And I thought, well, maybe later in the day I'll have coffee with the half and half. And I find even once I've broken my fast, I don't have the coffee with half and half.
So
It's just strange how it changed.
now you are a real connoisseur of coffee.
He's a black
And
Right.
coffee.
I've been a black coffee drinker forever, and I can't imagine. I get a good cup of coffee, and I go into one of these stores where the coffee might be $3 or $4 for a cup of coffee today.
3, where
Right.
is that? That's cheap.
Yeah, that's cheap. But if you're just ordering a black coffee,
Oh, yeah,
it's it depends. But then I see people take and pour the milk, and it's kind of like, just go to McDonald's and get a cup of coffee there if you're going to add milk to it. I
Right.
mean, you just ruined this beautiful cup of coffee. But
I'm with
anyway,
you. Now I get it. It took me a while. Now I get it.
But I can understand. I can totally relate to what you're saying because I'm a tea drinker, and now I drink black tea until a certain hour in the morning, and a lot of days I just forget about it, and then I never end up having my second cup of tea with usually coconut milk and a large teaspoon of honey in it. It's just I don't know. I never thought I'd like black tea. But I do. I mean, so that's
Yeah,
what you have to understand too. You can still have something like you can have black tea, water, and black coffee, correct? I mean,
yes.
within
Yes.
this 12-hour period.
Mhm.
That's
And I've
okay.
discovered there's a couple, I mean, even in the evening, if people are used to having, glass of wine, sometimes a good substitute for that is even like a carbonated seltzer,
Mhm.
or flavored seltzer water that has natural flavors but no calories. There's also, recently I've discovered these like hop waters. There's a like carbonated tea with no calories that I've found really nice. It also has the adaptogens and it's decaffeinated, so it's kind of nice. I really like in that fasting when I'm done eating for the day before bed, I really like having
treat.
decaffeinated green tea in that time to help me relax. And if
I
people are
do.
used to alcohol, that's a great substitute for a glass of wine because it similarly helps your body, signal that it's time to start slowing down. So
And
a lot
don't
of, lot of good
Well,
healthy things you can put in that fasting window.
I'm drinking my Good Earth herbal tea, and it's really good stuff.
it is good. It's sweetened with cinnamon. So
Nice.
Just has to- yeah.
cinnamon. So,
And
but if
cinnamon is another just brain healthy compound. There's so many compounds that were put on this earth to keep us healthy. And we've just gotten so far away with all the chemicals that we're using to keep us healthy. And God's put everything here for us.
that's
The
right.
herbs, I mean, just looking even through COVID, things that we could use that were available in fruits and vegetables like quercetin that really helped people stay healthy, and basic vitamins and minerals. So I think stepping back and really focusing on how he designed us, understanding how our bodies work. They're just miraculous machines, and
They are.
we've got to take really good care of them because it's work to work against what we're being served for sure.
So we have a question from Judith. She wants to know about sugar substitutes.
Mm.
And my father, I think the sugar substitutes really was one of the triggers for my father's early dementia.
Yep.
He used so much of those blue packets.
He abused them.
Oh, it was terrible. He'd have a beautiful piece of fruit, and then he'd put two or three packets on there. He'd put it on his salads. I mean, he must have had, 25, 30 packets a day.
Wow.
And I think that's one of the main had early onset.
Wasn't early.
It was,
Wasn't
well,
too early.
anyway.
Yeah, but
I know what you mean though. Yeah. Sugar substitutes, I think in general, I'm against them, but just curious. I saw her comment. Okay. Agree. Yeah. The answer in general is never tricking your body. For when you want to have add
That's a
sweetness
good way to
something,
look at it. Never trick your body. I like that.
Yeah, so the sweeteners that I like are coconut sugar because there are times you need to add sweetness and you can add a bit. It's what's really a problem is getting these processed foods that have tons of sugar in them. The average American is taking in added sugar of 17 teaspoons a day. That's not all coming in your coffee in the morning. I mean, it's generally not sugar we're adding. It's just processed and hidden in all this stuff. So if you're adding sweetness, I like coconut sugar because it's got fiber. So that's a little bit better than refined sugar. Maple is a great sweetener. Honey is a great sweetener. They all have natural minerals and compounds that are healthy and some fiber. Coconut has the most fiber.
Close to the way God made them.
Yeah, exactly. So what I don't like about the sugar sweeteners, two things. First of all, they're synthetic chemicals, and I don't think they're designed for us. The one in the blue pack in particular, I believe it was just created when they were trying to make either a pesticide or a rat poison, and somebody said to test it, and somebody in the lab thought he said taste it, and the lab assistant tasted it and it was super sweet. So there are a lot of food scientists who would never consume that just based on the chemical structure of it because they understand what it looks like and they think it's unhealthy. So that's a major issue. And that is kind of borne out by the studies looking at diet sodas and their association with increased risk of dementia. So that's one thing. The other thing is those sweeteners are sweeter than table sugar. And so when you get your palate accommodated to that, like your dad did, I mean, he clearly, sweetness addiction is serious. I mean, sweetness is as addictive as cocaine. So when you accommodate your palate to the super high hit of that sweetness that drops off faster than sugar, it's higher and faster. It just keeps you craving sugar, and in your looking to satisfy that craving, you're going to bump into regular sugar and its deleterious effects. But it's feeding the sugar addiction and the sweetness addiction, which is really at the heart of the problem. And with all these processed foods, everything's so sweet. And once we start to pull back and cut our sugar down very gradually so it's as painless as possible, but not fill it in with those sweeteners, our palate changes back to actually a more savory seeking palate. And then you have those processed sweets and they're just disgustingly sweet. But that's why I don't think, and even stevia, I see this coming up. Stevia is rarely pure. It's often cut with other fake sweeteners. So at least it's on the natural spectrum. If you can get pure actual stevia, it just often, it's kind of like olive oil mayonnaise. It's like olive oil and canola oil. I know seed oils are
When
different.
we were first introduced
A lot
to
of times
stevia,
what you see is not the
Exactly. It's
label
not
really
exactly
not.
what's in it.
when we were first introduced to stevia, they sold it as a black facial product,
And it was pure.
and it was pure.
it was-
That's why it was
yeah.
black.
25 years ago.
And so it wasn't bleached or anything, but it tasted the same and it worked.
Uh-huh.
But that's the only way you could buy it. And since then, it's developed into quite the product.
Oh yeah, of course, because the big companies, right?
Yeah.
The big food companies are like, stevia, we got to now
But-
manufacture it. We got to add a bunch of chemicals and we got to make it, shelf friendly and last forever. So I don't even know the brands, but I've seen
But
the boxes of the stevia or the little packets that mimic sugar or some of the other artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
It's become artificial, like you said. So we just need to be careful. The funny thing is, especially women, they're so worried about putting a teaspoon of honey in their tea or their coffee if they need it sweetener. It's like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 11 calories, as if I'm remembering.
teaspoon of honey.
A teaspoon of honey is like 11 calories. Like that is not going to make a huge difference in your day. Everything else, cumulative, and especially like you said, if it's fake food and you're trying to trick your body goes around so hungry because it's nutritionally deprived. And obviously, that's why fast food is fake food and it's so bad for you. And that's why you put on weight, because if you have a hamburger from a fast food place, you're like, oh my gosh, now I want another one and another one and another one, because your body has not been fed the proper nutrients. And so you just continue on this cycle. And it's hard to get off of for a lot of people, but once you do, the cravings go away. And it's just, I'm just so happy that you approach this from brain health too, because, one reason I stopped practicing as a nutritionist, everything I do is through our ministry now. And I do try to help people with their diet when they ask me, but most people want to go on a diet. They want to lose weight. And I've always asked them, number one, how long did it take you to put on the weight? Oh, 20 years, 25 years. Okay, so this is going to be a long haul, right? And it's not about losing weight, right? It's about being healthy. And if you're healthy and you make the right choices, like you said, you didn't set out to lose weight by doing this time restricted eating. You lose weight naturally because your body is eating the way God designed it to eat. And by the way, the same thing happened to me over the holidays. I lost 4.6 pounds. I was going to tell you
over the
holidays because of this time restricted eating. And I mean, I went out to lunches. My women's group hosted a lunch like every other day, and we had so much fun, and champagne was served and all that. I felt bloated. I didn't feel my best, but I'm telling you, I got on my digital scale and I'm like, wait a second, I've lost 4.6 pounds. And I'm like, well, that's just because for the last 2 months, Robert and I do this time restricted eating. So I know it might still be confusing to some people. So I don't know, they can ask me and I can in turn ask you if anybody has a question. But I want to cover a couple other things about brain health, and that is sleep, stress, and if we have time, we'll talk about seed oils, because I gave up seed oils almost a year ago.
I really want to hear about stress and sleep.
Yes,
I have a friend of mine who's just not able to sleep right now because he's under so much stress. And I wish I could give him something that would help him sleep.
It's so difficult. Yeah, those two are really major risk factors that we have in our modern lifestyle that are affecting our brain health. And the reason that sleep is so critically important and such a big risk factor for dementia is that actually, when you get deep sleep, there's a cleaning mechanism in the brain that takes away toxins that were deposited during the day. And one of those toxins is amyloid, which again is one of those proteins we talked about that's highly associated with Alzheimer's. So it's really important to get good deep sleep. That's easier said than done. One thing that I think can be helpful for people is to use some of these personal monitoring devices, like the Whoop band. I wear a little Aura ring that monitors your sleep. And sometimes people are worried that it'll give them more anxiety because they'll see how poorly they're sleeping. I found that I'm kind of a gal who wakes up at 2 in the morning and starts worrying for a little while. And then I pray and meditate and eventually get back to sleep. And so I really thought my sleep was broken up and not healthy. And I was surprised to see that I was still, even with that kind of midlife perimenopausal sleep pattern, I was getting adequate deep sleep. So I think that's kind of an interesting opportunity that people have to monitor themselves rather than having to go to a sleep center and do a sleep. I mean, you don't sleep normally when you're in that sleep center anyway, but being able to monitor yourself, whether it's, tracking with your phone or however people want to do that. But it's really important, with stress and sleeping to be sure that our hormones of cortisol and melatonin are getting the appropriate cues from the environment. And our environment is sending all kinds of inappropriate cues to us. For example, looking at screens within 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed directly stimulates your retina. Pardon?
Would that
Like we're doing right now.
Yeah, right now, but it's early, so we're going to get off soon.
Right. So but the problem with all this screen time is that it directly stimulates the retina, and that suppresses your natural melatonin. So then when you stop watching screens, there's a lag between that suppression, finally letting your melatonin build. And even when it does start to build, if you've been suppressing your melatonin into the evening by looking at screens, the peak you get of your melatonin will be later, but it will also be lower. So it's really important to start building cues into the 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed. So you stop eating, you maybe switch to green tea that's decaffeinated, that has a lot of compounds, L-theanine, that help send relaxing signals to your brain. You focus on reading, praying, meditating, calming activities, taking a warm bath. Really giving your brain a lot of cues that it's time to go to bed so all those hormones can reset. And similarly in the morning, we should be getting bright sunlight in the morning, because when you get up, you want to inhibit that melatonin right away with bright sunlight, and really help your circadian rhythm get back to where it should be. Our modern lifestyle does everything to fight our circadian rhythm, including having our stress hormone cortisol going all day long. It's supposed to come up in the morning, wake us up, and then fade as we go on through the day. But with all these stressors all day long, our cortisol levels are staying high, and that's also making it harder for us to relax at night.
So, in other words, if there's someone listening that isn't sleeping well and they get up in the middle of the night and say, "Oh, I'm just going to check my email real quick," they have their phone next to them,
not a
whatever.
good thing.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. And perhaps you should even ask your friend, "Hey, make sure you, or tell them, make sure you stay off your screen at night."
Here's a question. Don and I typically watch TV till about 9 o'clock at night, and then go upstairs and read till about 10. Does the television have the same impact as, say, our computer screen?
Yeah, the television does. And the minimum I would say to split those two activities would be an hour. If you're having relatively normal sleep. If you're having really challenged sleep, then you want to get another at least 2 hours between watching TV and bedtime. But if you're doing relatively okay with your sleep and you're not concerned about it, an hour is fine. It's just, people who have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, then you want to get 2 hours, maybe even up to 3, and put in a ton of relaxing cues into those couple hours. So it should, I mean, if you're doing fine with that, that's totally fine.
I sleep like a log. I don't know about him, but one thing I want to say too is that a lot of people don't realize that for me, and I'm saying this from personal experience, I cannot consume anything with caffeine after noon. That would include a chocolate chip cookie, a bite of a brownie, anything like that. I cannot. I'm very sensitive, so I know. And like I said, I'm a tea drinker. Once in a while, I'll have a cup of coffee. Although anybody who knows me says, "Oh gosh, she had coffee. I don't need it." But I know for me, if I have anything past noon, I'll go to sleep fine, but I don't stay asleep. And that to me is something that people don't necessarily think about because they think, oh, I don't drink coffee and I don't drink Coca-Cola. Well, what did you have dessert at your lunchtime? Would you have? Oh yeah, I had a piece of chocolate mousse pie or whatever. And it's like they have the biggest aha. So anyway.
Well, the other thing to think about, you mentioned waking up and checking email in the night. Certainly not. Like no electronics in your bedroom, no checking email, no looking at anything in the middle of the night. But also, it's a really good idea to try to not check your email or look at your phone for the first hour you wake up in the morning, because you get there's an anxiety with opening email because there are some negative things in there or bills or whatever. Anyway. So you start to train yourself. If you wake up and you look at your phone right away and you get that anxious hit or that stress hit, you will start to train yourself that when you wake up, you get a stress hit, which is going to make it harder when you wake up at 3 a.m. to get back to sleep. So you also, just like you want to separate your like thinking activities at night from bedtime, you also want to separate that in the morning. Be a little gentler with yourself. If you are used to waking up and looking at it right away while you're brushing your teeth, just try it by 15 minutes. Just separate it by 15 minutes. And then maybe you can push to half an hour. Maybe you can push to 45 minutes, an hour. But, give yourself that calm morning to just get into the day without really getting a hit of anxiety, because it gets psychologically tied to your awakening.
Well, Taryn, I want to thank you for being our guest tonight.
So great.
We have gone way over as far as our time is concerned.
I knew we would. It's too interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
We can talk for another hour.
This stuff. Exactly.
We'll have to have you back as soon as your book comes out. Okay?
Would love it. Would love it.
The Brain Health Action Plan by Dr. Taryn Clark, and it's Teryn Clark, Clarke. So write that down, and we'll post it too. We're going to put it up there when it comes out. We'll put it up for you, and we'll make sure you get a copy of this podcast as well, and you can do whatever you want with it. And it's been a pleasure having you on, and I'm so glad that we met. I'm so glad we got to work together in these vision workshops. And by the way, people, if you haven't done a vision workshop, it's really important. The Bible tells us that without a vision, people perish. Men will perish, women will perish. You have to have a vision for your life, no matter how old you are, no matter how young you are. And having a vision in each different area of your life is so important. So if you want more information, it's obviously now the vision workshop timing, I think, is over. Amy Cardiff's last vision workshop was, I think, while I was out of town last weekend or 2 weekends. I don't know. It's over, but I'll get you the information next time. So she's going to be having these again. They sell out, and I think she had 4 of them this season in December, and then the beginning of January. Yeah, January 6th, I think, was the last one. But it's well worth it. So leave us your contact information. We'll let you know.
So Taryn, there's a few other things we have to say before we say goodbye, but I want to say goodbye to you right now. Thank you again for being our guest. We appreciate it. Any last comment that you have?
No, thank you for having me. I will let you know when I'm getting closer to book launch, and anybody who wants to be on the team and get an early copy, I would love to welcome any of your listeners to that. And I hope I didn't confuse anybody with what I said, but I think it's all really well explained in the book too. So,
can't wait.
Yeah,
look forward to reading it.
Me too. I want to be done.
Yeah, exactly. God is blessing you, Taryn. Have a nice day.
And we have a couple of announcements, so stay tuned, everyone.
So, boy, this is a great interview with Taryn, and again, I want to remind you that we exist and are able to do this through your donations. So we want to thank everyone who's
Mhm.
made pledges and support this ministry. Go to our website, drschuller.org. That's
Hopefully they're watching on there right now.
DRSCHULLER.org. And you can click that like to give button, become a recurring donor, or give one-time gift of any amount would be appreciated and will support our ministry. Or you can go to Venmo. It's Robert Schuller Ministries on Venmo. Or you can write to us at 26 Kenyon Island Drive, Newport Beach, California, 92660. So
And that's at the bottom of our website. You probably didn't catch that, but scroll to the bottom of drschuller.org or robertschullerministries.org. They will take you to the same page. And then scroll to the bottom. You'll see our mailing address if you choose to mail a check. And God will bless you always for what you're able to give. That's just the way He works.
So we're here every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. And then
Mhm.
again, the 15th of every month at 6 p.m. Pacific time. It's time for the call. This has been our call. It's been a wonderful hour with you. We will try to keep it down to 40 minutes, but hey.
It was too interesting.
What
I
can
hope
you say?
you think so.
So have a great night, a great month. And we will be here again at the same time, 6 p.m. Pacific time, on February the 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. So
And we'll be here every Sunday. So join us Sundays at 8 a.m. We'd love to have you anytime. Robert always has a great message, and our service is less than an hour. Absolutely.
40
it's
minutes.
about 40 minutes.
So God is blessing you, everybody.
Yes, He is.
And we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Good night.